Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This here is a video that I regretted making. I filmed this months ago. The wound was still sore, but we're over it now. This here is the NECA 2-pack of Kratos and Atreus from the God of War 2018 PlayStation game. I've covered a few video game action figures on this channel now, but this was actually one of the first ones that I managed to get a hold of back at release. The packaging for this box here is designed to resemble the Jotnar shrines. Favorite part of these really cool imported items is the official PlayStation seal in the top there. These products aren't usually sold in my country, so I love managing to get my hands on these whenever I can. The underside of the NECA toys has the credits of the figures. These are the people that brought me the toy. It's always cool to see the team behind the products that I've been buying, so I like this attention to detail. We also have some instructions here on how to assemble some of the accessories inside. The sides of the box here show the figures of the 2-pack and the information needed about the joints and accessories and the works. First here is Kratos and the other side features Atreus. Kratos seems to offer significantly more than the boy does. Now the back of the box here is also very impressive. We have some great looking stills of the heroes here, all posed up with their added extras. Some more needed information and some final poses, but opening the toy up, the box is still designed exactly like the collectibles from the game. The sides of the box here show us Kratos here, and some small description on each character. The other side then of course showcases Atreus, and we also get a little bio about him and his involvement with the game. And just take a look at all those accessories here locked away in this box, from weapons to expressions to dynamics. Really great solid inclusions, and it helped to really sell the pack. Now before this set was released, NECA did release a Kratos on his own, which I managed to find during a Christmas rush about a year or so before this pack was released, so for a while this was all that I needed for my collection. Here's the pack out of the box here. We have all of the accessories laid out, and there's even more on offer here than I thought. There's just so many incredible looking inclusions, it's really hard to not be satisfied with all of this right out the gate. Kratos here is great. Sometimes NECA nails the looks of figures and sometimes they don't. It's kinda hit or miss. Some of the other NECA related game characters that I've looked at here on the channel look pretty rough actually, but I actually do think that Kratos looks pretty superb. I can already tell that the paint on him is a lot different from that first release. This guy almost looks pink though. The red appears to have kind of blended in with the white tones a little bit. I love the expression here of a resting angry face, and the up close details of clothes really show off the work and effort put into the design here. His shoulder armor being a piece that is actually molded into its own separate thing as well. It's not something that's been molded into his torso. The figure has really cool different details in his clothing and appearance, which we can get into once we start comparing the figures to the previous ones. Spoilery inclusions here like Mimir, who was absent from the initial release, and very cool to see here. I do wish he was removable though. He just kind of remains attached at all times. He features other really cool details here like nice designs for his boots, but more importantly we have his chains wrapped around his gauntlets here, a detail that was missing from the first 2018 release because the Blades of Chaos were treated as a full-on reveal in the game. It was a spoilery inclusion similar to Mimir. His tattoo printing is okay, but because it covers over the joints it means that unless lined up properly it might look a little off sometimes. The paint again though appears very smeared and pinkish in my eyes. I'm not really a big fan of that. Kratos features the usual NECA articulation with some decent head movements, rather clunky due to the size here though. Arm movements are pretty standard and that is really great to see. We have bends and rotates here in the shoulder, and the arm can rotate around and bend in the elbow joint there as well. Some hand movements here too, not the most agile character, but the movements do work great here, and the same can be said for the other arm, which should move the same way, but that's when disaster strikes. Some gummy joint on the inside of the arm was the thing rotating around, not the arm itself, and now I have a broken Kratos toy. This pissed me off so much. For years now, I've read online that NECA have pretty rough quality control when it comes to their toys, and that these figures don't age very well. Now despite those claims, which I don't deny, I do have a pretty good collection of NECA figures from the 2010s that have lasted well over a decade plus of having them, so this really shocked me. Besides that issue though, he can still move in other areas, but this recording is the reason why I've been very cautious about these NECA toys over the past few months. This was recorded way back in April, so this was a really rough thing for me to kind of go through. He's got waist movements pretty decent and legs that move like the arms do. We've got bends and rotates for the upper leg and movements in the knee. Also some feet movement, and the toes are always something that surprises me as well. For a comparison test here, that's where things get really interesting here. I do have an older NECA Kratos toy who I believe was released for the God of War 2 releases, and already you can see how wild the differences here are. And to compare him to the first 2018 game's figure release, which thankfully is not broken, but really who knows how long that'll last for. These all look really interesting together together. It's cool that you can see how the style both in game series and the toy line changed over the years. The colors here are so extreme on these guys. The main comparison here though is for the 2018 figure, especially now since he's going to have to be my definitive version. The body tattoo looks to be pretty similar, but the biggest difference here is obviously in the face details and that skin tone. I think it's kind of a mixed bag for both of them. I might prefer the 2018 figure in skin tone. I don't like the blackened ash-like spots, but he doesn't come off as pinkish compared to the newer one. I do prefer him cleaner despite probably not being as accurate. One thing about that 2018 figure, I hate the face compared to the newer 2-pack figure. The eyes just look so off to me, and he looks so much more pissed than I would prefer. I would rather his resting face, honestly. He appears more detailed, but it feels like an overkill design to me. The details for the waist are immediately different as well. We have the same knife sheath and phase ashes, but a different color. But instead of having Mimir in the 2018 release, he comes attached with a horn. I can't recall right now what the significance of the horn was because it's been a while since I played through that game. His gauntlets are also appearing differently here because, like I mentioned earlier, the Blades of Chaos chains were considered a spoiler. I'm still really bummed about that arm. I liked this figure so much. It can be fixed, but he's never really going to be the same. And Atreus is next here, but before we cover the plethora of accessories, this was the selling point for me. It is wild to have a secondary figure like this released because NECA never really made extras in the other video game lines. Like, we never got anyone else from the Uncharted characters, they never seemed to continue the Prototype series or other EA based games, so really this was a surprise to see. Detail wise, this isn't one of their best though. I say this each time I cover NECA. NECA sometimes do an amazing job and sometimes they miss. It's his eyes, I think. The face just looks really weird to me. He has scars across his face, which is a really cool detail to see, and differently to Kratos, he does have a lot of emphasis put on him for his archery skills. It is cool to see details like this. He's got a quiver here, it's just glued to his back, and his harness is sculpted into his body so the quiver can't be removed from his person. He's got some special molded hands that will allow him to hold a bow and an arrow. His molding is thinner than Kratos as well. Smaller parts here are used for his hands and legs and limbs in general, and size wise he is quite small in comparison here, smaller than I imagine he would be, but they do look pretty good together. Just ignore that missing arm. And being rather careful here though, Atreus features every movement that Kratos uses. The head has some nice movements, the arms too, which feature the same bends and rotates that we covered with the big dog himself. Waist and legs move the same way, very articulated despite being a smaller figure to what I'm used to receiving from NECA. And now it's time for all those really crazy extras. We start with Atreus because ultimately he does feature less than Kratos. We've got an alternate hand and a small knife here. They seem to pair well with each other, which is why I have them together here. His main weapon of choice is his bow, with a functioning string like the Toy Biz Lord of the Rings toys. It's always cool to see details like that on toys. Atreus also includes some arrows since his bow is functioning. The arrows look really nice and individually detailed, and the weapon accessories can be equipped in his storage areas. That dagger there easily fits into place with his sheath, and the arrows fit in the quiver there as well. I then tried to pose him as though he's preparing an arrow to fire, which can be done. It's a little tricky though. An arrow just simply sits in his hand like so, and now it looks like he's ready to help attack. Kratos then has a lot on offer, and apologies, I won't be able to do the accessories the justice that they deserve unfortunately, but we'll just have to make do. 2 fists needed for accessories later on, an even angrier expression while he appears in Spartan Rage mode, full mouth open design and more anger in his eyes than before. We do also have the Leviathan axe, and it's slightly different than the last model's release. This axe here appears with different colors and some gems and runes locked into place because I believe this is the axe in its upgraded form. It's awesome to see in-game mechanics translated into toy form like this. The coolest weapon inclusion here easily are the Blades of Chaos. They look pretty phenomenal here in person. Nice new depiction for the game and sharper than anticipated. You're able to remove the handle away from the blade like so for getting these onto the figure easier. On top of those blades, we also have these ones that appear to be upgraded. These Blades of Chaos just look incredible. The colors are really shiny and the blades have some engravings. You can easily see how different these things are once we look at them side by side with the other blades. These blades also include chains attached to the handle, and like the previous blades, you can remove the handle so to make holding the weapon easier. A small dagger is included, though I don't think he'll be using that nearly as much as he will with these blades. The shield accessories, first the Guardian shield itself, which looks pretty cool. I always really love the mixed color of gold and red here. And then we also have the shield in its folded up format for when Kratos is not needing it in action. And now for the really exciting inclusions here, the dynamics. The first one here is some frost for the axe, all made from a rubber-like material so that they're easy to equip and display. The next inclusions here are very similar to the ones I looked at from the Halloween 2-pack. Some flame accessories which are used to show off some Spartan Rage as well as dynamics for the blades. First things first, the shield all folded up can slot into place here on his gauntlet. If you remove that piece, you can put the shield here instead, but I have a really hard time getting this thing on if I'm honest, so I'm just gonna give up here. I'm sure you can do it because I did manage to do it with the older figure, but this time it's just not budging. The axe and the ice frost dynamic, you just slightly open up the area and insert the axe inside. Really cool, and it looks like it does have some genuine movement. I love this display item. The little dagger can go inside that sheath, and the axe can be placed in this section too if you don't want the axe on display. Now removing that fist and head and swapping them over for the alternates, basic swaps, the parts here just come out of the ball joint and we can utilize these parts for the next accessories since they pair up together, looking really angry and ready for the remaining extras. For the blades, I remove that handle away and now I can insert the hand and connect the blade again for the display. Looks really cool. I can also link that chain to the wrist. You can see that there is a very small hole here and that is for connecting the chain together. So now his swords are linked to his wrist like they are in the game and he can throw the sword and bring them back to him. Really cool that they managed to find a way to make this work. The really appealing factor here is that flame element which contrasts with the axe and frost inclusion. The same detail here, the flame piece wraps around the blades and now we get something that looks a little like this. Seems to be only one flame inclusion for the blades though, so one of them will have to simply go without. The final flame pieces are, like I said, used for his Spartan Rage. They go on the arms once the fists have been equipped so that he can activate his Spartan Rage. And that is the NECA God of War set overall. Atreus is a pretty cool inclusion because it's just not likely that we get side characters like that in toy form. The molding is smaller than the usual NECA figure line, so he required more care and effort, and I like what we have for the most part here. The face details are really lacking for me, but I still see Atreus and the accessories are pretty good inclusions too. And as for Kratos, man, I love it, but it bums me out now. At least I have a spare secondary figure to use, but I do prefer a lot of this guy more in comparison, so it's kind of a double-edged sword for me. These dynamics here really make the figure shine, because looking at the NECA toys for the second and third titles in the series, the Kratos figures with all the added extras were always the more appealing figures for me personally. I love the accessories here, especially the Blades of Chaos, which look excellent, and the amount of display options for the dynamics is also just incredible. I really wish mine didn't break, of course, that just depresses me so much. So this is a video that ultimately I actually regret filming, and maybe sometimes you should just learn to leave your toys alone.